Hello students, myself Dr. Divya, Assistant Professor, Department of Chemistry, Institute of Aeronautical Engineering. So in this session you will learn what is water pollution, its effects, causes and effects, and what are the solutions to reduce water pollution. So here are the topics: water pollution, types, sources of water pollution and effects of water pollution. Are the pollutants, what are the effects of water pollutants that are causing, then prevention and control measures for water pollution, like how to reduce the pollution of water. So what is water pollution? It is nothing but a physical, chemical or biological change in water quality we are using in our daily life. Like water is very essential in our life. So for every purpose we'll be using water. So if there is slight difference in its quality, like physical, chemical or biological changes that adversely affects the living organisms like mankind or any other living organisms, that is nothing but pollution of water. So what are the different types of pollutions? Like biological, how the biological pollution occurs, like through infectious diseases like pathogens or oxygen demanding waste that is present in water. Then chemicals, like chemicals are from nutrients that we supply to the plants through fertilizers. Then toxic inorganic materials that are from the various sources that we get, and persistent organic pollutants, POPs. So these are some of the chemical components that mix with the water and cause pollution. So next is the physical changes that occur. So what are the physical changes that will be varying with due to pollution? It is sediments that occurs, then thermal pollution and solid waste that is present in water due to that changes takes place in water due to pollution. So what are the real signs? How to detect the signs? Like how can you know that there is pollution in this water? It gives bad taste to drinking water. Can you really drink the sewage water? No, because that is polluted water. So because it has bad odor and taste. So offensive odor from river, lakes and oceans also indicates pollution, or these are the simple signs that are giving us an indication that water is getting polluted. So decrease in number of fishes in sea or seawater. So we generally don't go to the seas or seawater daily. So it is the only purpose, like we have to understand through the number of population of fishes, like wherever there is a less number of fishes that are growing, that could be because of pollution of that particular water body. So oil or grease floating on the surface, it occurs generally in the near refineries or industries, that wherein the oil or the grease will be left thrown into the water body. So wherever there is oil or grease floating on the water body, the respiration systems of the organisms get affected because they cannot breathe in. So unchecked growth of aquatic weeds. So if we see this picture, there is a lot of weed that is growing on this water body, so that there is no space for the air to go into the deeper layers of water, because the plankton itself consumes a lot of oxygen from the atmosphere. So where do we really get these pollutants from? So generally pollutants of water come by humans, like mankind. We are generally the major causes, like wherein we are doing a lot of urbanization due to urban states or countries, suburban or any other effluents that we are throwing into the water is causing pollution. So there are various classification of water pollution. The two main sources are the direct, the point and non-point indirect sources. So these are the sources of water pollution. Sources of water pollution. So point wise is like nothing but the waste water treatment or the sewage that is going into the lakes or rivers, contaminating the water. So we particularly know that there is contamination from this particular source. So we will see in detail how this happens. So in a single defined source of pollution, so we know that this is the point of source that is causing pollution. So that is nothing but the point source pollution. So point source pollution can be monitored and regulated. So we know this particular pipe is causing the polluted water into the water body, so we can regulate easily. For example, discharges from the sewage treatment plant Then discharges from the factories like this, like waste from the factories. Then a city storm drain. So whenever there is a storm that is happening, the drain is going into the water. Drain water is going into the rivers. So these are some of the examples of point source pollutions. Then coming to non-point source pollution, we cannot really identify or recognize from where this pollution is happening to that particular water body. So no single source can be identified, but a wide ranges of sources. They are like in contribution, the contribution of the pollution will be different from the different sources. So non-point source are much difficult to monitor and control. When there are a lot of sources that are contributing, it is really different. Like the case is different, like it is difficult to handle. So there, for example, leaching out nitrogen compounds from the agricultural lands. So this leaching out is happening in a daily life, but we cannot really give a justification that it is only from this farmland and not from other land. So this it can be from other source also. So this is one of the example. So this water and the runoff water both will mix into the river. So different sources are contributing to this pollution. That is how it is difficult to control. So what are the different types of pollutions that happens due to these sources? Nutrients pollution, surface water pollution, oxygen depleting, then groundwater pollution, microbiological pollution, then suspended water, then chemical water pollution and oil spillage. So these are different pollutions that happens to the water due to the different sources. So nutrient pollution, like some wastewater or the fertilizers that are used in the crops will contain high levels of nutrients or the elements or the ions that are used. So that will really get into the water bodies. So they will help in growing the algae and weed. Tremendous growth will take place. So this will really occupy the space or the top layer of the water, top layers of water. So there is obviously there is depletion of oxygen. How does it happen? It first of all, it makes water undrinkable to the human mankind. Then water organisms die due to oxygen starvation, because there is no input of oxygen into the deeper layers, or the oxygen levels decreases. Oxygen levels decreases. So no input of oxygen into the layers of water, and therefore the fishes or other organisms living in the water body will be dying. Next, surface water pollution. So surface water itself indicates that the water that is present, the top layer of top water of any water body is nothing but the surface water. So surface water includes natural water that is coming from earth, like rain. So for example, rivers, lakes, lagoons and oceans. These are some of the surface water. So hazardous substances that are coming from different industries get into contact with this surface water. So what happens in that case? So these substances will get dissolved or mix with the water that is present stagnantly. So they combine or react with the water present and cause surface water pollution. For example, if you see, there is a lot of plastic that is thrown in this water. So this slowly degrades and just reacts with this surface water and pollute the water completely. So next is oxygen depletion. That's what we have been discussing, like the oxygen levels will be going down when too much of biodegradable matter ends up in water. It encourages more microorganisms growth, and they use up more oxygen than the useful organisms like fish. So the microorganisms will be using up lot of oxygen that is present in the atmosphere, omitting it to go into the deeper layers of water wherein fishes live. So that is how the oxygen depletion takes place. So if at all oxygen is depleted, aerobic organisms die and anaerobic organisms grow more and more to produce harmful toxins like ammonia and sulfides. So anaerobic doesn't require, anaerobic means without air, so without oxygen. So It doesn't require oxygen to grow, so therefore anaerobic organisms grow tremendously and produce ammonia, and sulfides. So these are very harmful to the any living organisms. Next is the groundwater pollution. So whenever human apply these pesticides and insecticides to the crops, they get washed away and go into the deeper layers of ground by rainwater. So once there is a rainy season starting, these pesticides get washed away. Excess of pesticides get washed off and go into the soil. So this gets into the underground water, causing underground water pollution to the underground water. So this means when we dig wells, so whenever it is going into the underground water, there is it requires a lot of time for the regeneration or settle downing of that water. But if there is digging of wells or bore wells happening, this water get into our bore wells. So that is how we even take up this contaminated water from the ground. So underground storage and tube leakage. For example, we have a toiletries that are present. So that is having a sewage tank. So if at all, if it is not properly or damaged, that is damaged, and it has a probability of leakage from these to the borewell. So this always the percolation happens, and whenever we are taking up the water, there is always possibility of this contamination from the sewage tank. So many liquid products are stored in metal or the steel tubes underground. So other sewage systems run in the underground tubes. So we also have tubes that are running through into the sewage tank. So over the time they get rust and begin to leak. The leakage happens due to rusting process, and if it happens, it contaminates the soil as well the water underground present. So that is the most dangerous, it will be contaminating with the ammonia and other sulfide gases again. So these also causes problem to the mankind whenever we are taking this water for our daily purpose. Next is a microbiological pollution. How does this happen? Microbes. So microbes plays a major role here. So sometimes what happens, there is always a natural pollution also happening due to these microbes like a virus, bacteria and protozoa that grow and they cause a pollution to the water present. So this natural pollution can cause fishes and other water life the other water organisms to die. So because of over excess of bacteria or the microorganisms is also not good to the water. So they can also cause serious illness to the humans who drink such water. So it is always better to avoid water contaminated with microbes. So that is why we opt some of the techniques like boiling and using this water. Next is a suspended matter. So there are a lot of materials that we throw into the garbage. So these garbage will be landfills. Sometimes they enter into the water bodies. So for example, some pollutants do not dissolve in water. Or they take longer time for the dissolution and degradability. So this kind of material is nothing but particulate matter. So some suspended pollutants later settle down under the water bodies. So they go into the deeper and settle underground in the water bodies. For example, like seas. So this can harm and even kill aquatic life that depend on the water of that particular sea body. So that also affects the animals that are living and also the birds that drink water. For example, this is a mask that is present. Whenever a mask is thrown without cutting its edges, that can harm the birds. They will take up, that will be it will be masking the mouth of that bird and they cannot take up other food material for this living purpose. So that is how it is also affecting their living environment. So it is always important to take small precautions during our disposal and also helping the environment to avoid any pollution. So next is the chemical water pollution. So many industries and farmers work with chemicals like fertilizers, like they will be throwing, like it will go into the water in areas where it is nearby because of washing of these pesticides or insecticides during rainy season. So this common point is like point source, we can identify that it is just because of that source it is coming from. So it includes chemicals that are used to control the weeds, insects and pests. So metals and solvents from industries is also like we can identify it is from which source it is coming from. That also pollutes water bodies, and these are very poisonous to many forms of aquatic life and may slow their development and make them infertile and also even kill them. So these are the different sources wherein the pollution occurs. So this chemical water pollution caused by some detergents also. For example, there is a laundry detergents for contain about 30%, 35% to 75% of phosphate salts. So these salts will be dissolving and settling down into the lakes and rivers. So before it is settling down, it is also carried away to the other point, like other people place, so that it is contaminated. So this water will get contaminated because of detergents that are used, harsh detergents that are used. So, and the example is the plaster of Paris that we use for the idols. So that also sometimes pollutes the water because it degrades the quality of water and also makes it undrinkable. So this dissolution or the takes longer time. The dissolving is slow. So therefore, it is contaminating the water and also the water becomes undrinkable to the mankind. Next is the oil spillage. So the name itself indicates that spilling of oil into the water bodies causes pollution to that particular water. So it has a localized effect on the wildlife. The animals that come for drinking water also get affected, but can spread to miles because this water is not stagnant. If it is not a stagnant water, it is flowing through other areas, and therefore it can also spread to miles of areas. So this oil can cause death to many fishes and get stick to feathers of seabirds, causing them to lose their ability to fly. Like the seabirds feathers will be sticking with the oil so that they have the effect. So next comes the examination. So we have seen that a lot of pollution that is happening. So it is also necessary to examine or identify the pollution of that water. How do we really do in the engineering perspective? So various tests are performed to examine the pollution of water. For example, the best, the least test or the first preliminary test is the pH. pH is very important. Like the value of pH gives the acidity or alkalinity, degree of acidity or alkalinity of a water. So for example, there is lot of water that is present. The rainwater has some pH, the lake water has some pH, and the borewell water has some pH. So for example, if there is polluted water given to you and the pH is high, it is alkaline. If it is low, below 7, it is acidic. So this we can identify the source depending on the pH also. Next is the biological oxygen demand. So it is nothing but the quantity of oxygen utilized by microorganisms at a temperature of 20 degrees centigrade. So this temperature is best for the growth of microorganisms. The optimum temperature for growing microorganisms is 20 degrees. So generally it is measured for 5 days. So the quantity of oxygen that is reduced by microorganisms due to their growth is nothing but biological oxygen demand. So microbes are the biological microorganisms are growing, depleting the oxygen level. So when does it happen? When unwanted materials pollute water, naturally the oxygen content gets reduced, because whenever there is unwanted contents or materials thrown into water, there is scope for the microbes to develop and they grow and grow. So whenever they are growing, they reduce the oxygen that is present in the water, and that water becomes not fit for consumption by a human or any other animals or plants. And also living organisms require water in some quantity of sustainable oxygen in that. So that is nothing but BOD. So we require certain amount of oxygen for our survival. So, that is nothing but BOD or biological oxygen demand. So next is a dissolved oxygen. So this is the amount of oxygen dissolved in the dissolved form in water at a particular temperature, and atmospheric pressure is nothing but dissolved oxygen. At a particular temperature and atmospheric pressure, the oxygen present is nothing but the dissolved oxygen. So for example, in polluted waters, dissolved oxygen is the factor where it determines whether the biological changes are carried by aerobic microorganisms or anaerobic microorganisms, because anaerobic doesn't require oxygen, whereas aerobic requires oxygen for their growth. So for example, 5 to 8 milligram per liter of dissolved oxygen is required for most of the species and fishes. So if we see that if there is a dissolved oxygen of 0 to 4 milligram per liter, no fish can live. So it is not sufficient for the fish survival. Whereas from 4 to 6.5, a few fishes can live. Some species of fishes can live. Whereas when it is 6.5 to 9.5, most of the fish can live. Almost all the types of species can live. It means that they require certain amount of oxygen that is in the dissolved form in the water so that they can survive. In the same way, like 9.5 to 14 plus. So whenever there is high dissolved oxygen, it is good for the survival of fishes or any other useful organisms or useful animals that can live in the water. Next is a chemical oxygen demand. So this test is conducted to determine the pollution strength of the sewage. So this is generally done. The sewage water is taken, then potassium dichromate solution is added so that there is a reduction reaction, oxidation reduction reactions takes place that occurs wherein potassium dichromate and potassium permanganate acts as oxidizing agents. So this, after some time, the digestion is taking place in the reactor and the sample is used for the COD or the chemical oxygen demand test. So these are the different tests that we carry out to know the pollution or how much is the polluted, the water is polluted, and the source can be identified depending upon these values that we obtain from these examinations. So what are the effects of this pollution? Ecological effects like excessive nutrients in water bodies promote plant growth, which leads to drop in water quality. So whenever there is a nutrient, excessive nutrients, for example, from the fertilizers, there is a weed formation of the plankton. All the planktons are not useful to mankind or any other living organisms. So whenever there is excess growth of weeds, that depletes the oxygen and the fishes die. So that is how the quality of water lowers. So whenever the quality is bad, the organisms living in the water will get affected. The lack of oxygen for shellfish and marine life get in trouble, causing a drop in their population. So that is how there is a drop in the population due to depletion of oxygen. Decrease in the recreational and aesthetic value of water bodies. So, for example, if we want to go to some areas where it looks like an aquarium, the water body that looks beautiful because of these different kinds of fishes, that whenever there is a decrease in population, it reduces the recreational purpose, so that the population decreases, the mankind doesn't visit the place. Health problems when it occurs in the drinking water reserves. So whenever there is a problem in the drinking water, health problems takes place. Coral reef will decline and decrease biodiversity, and decrease in the water transparency, that is the turbidity of the water will increase. Next is the water bloom. This is the other effect that happens in the water due to water pollution. So a growth of algae at or near the surface of water bodies such as pond is nothing but like it is a type of pollution that is happening to the water. Like for example, blue-green algae that is developing in the water body, stagnant water body. So these can become very abundant in warm, shallow, undisturbed water or nothing but stagnant water that is present. Stagnant water that receives lot of sunlight. So in the sunlight, in the daylight, it receives a lot of sunlight for their growth and takes place the growth of blue-green algae. When this occurs, they can form blooms that discolor the water. So the color of the water will change and produce floating rafts or scums on the surface of water. So if you see, these are nothing but the scums that are called scums. So this bluish one, the color is also changing. So this float on the water. So blue in color or blue-green water, this is unsuitable for drinking. So this type of pollution of fresh water bodies by blue-green algae is nothing but called water bloom. So this is the water bloom. This is called water bloom that occurs in the stagnant water due to growth of algae. Next is the among other pollutants like industrial pollutants. One of the best example is the asbestos fiber, which is very dangerous also. Like in previous traditional ways, we used to use asbestos pipes for the transport of water, like municipal supply of water. So in that, what happens, there is slow leaching of these fibers into the water, and we drink upon, like we cannot really, the filters cannot really filter all the smaller levels sizes of these asbestos fibers, like 1 micron, 2 micron size. So that is why that also causes asbestosis, mesothelioma. It is nothing but in lung they get accumulated and causes lung diseases. These fibers get accumulated in the lung diseases, cause lung diseases like lung cancer, intestinal cancer, liver cancer, etc. So where we breathe, like we cannot even able to breathe. So this contaminant is carcinogenic and pose a significant health risk. So the other example is the lead, the heavy metal contamination due to industrial effluents. So lead is one of the metal that is harmful to any health, like harmful to mankind and environment. So many species, including humans, are poisoned by lead, and because it inhibits the functioning of physiological enzymes. So these are the effects, the impact due to industrial effluents. So it is also important to take care of effluent recycle or proper disposal, so that there is a minimum or no pollution to the atmosphere. Next, the effects of water pollution also includes like mercury poisoning. So this is can cause a disease in animals and also hazardous to human health. Sulfur is also another non-metal. So other than metal, sulfur is one of the non-metal that also toxic to marine life and also human. And petrochemicals is a type of chemical that is present in the form of gas or petrol. So the water bodies near refineries are really affected because of these petrochemicals or the gas, and is harmful to marine life. So marine life is nothing but the fishes or any other living organisms in the marine. Next is a fluorosis. This is widely we see in our state also, like Telangana. People suffer from these diseases due to consumption of water that contain high concentrations of fluorine. Fluoride salts are high in these areas, in some areas, that cause fluorosis disease. So quantity of fluoride in water is only permitted to 1 ppm. So, like as per WHO standards, it is only 1 ppm. World Health Organization has given some concentration that is permissible limit to the fluoride, that is 1 ppm. It is also like 1 to 1.5 for Indian standards or BAS standards. And this the high increased concentration of this fluoride in body causes back pain. The first symptom is the back pain, and we cannot really bend easily. The joints will be affecting. If we see these pictures, we can see that the joints of these legs are affected and joints are stiffened, so the movement will be impaired, and the teeth are worstly affected, and brown coating appears on the enamel of the teeth, giving a bad appearance. So this is the deposition. Fluorides are salts. Because of fluoride salts, there is a coating that appears on the enamel of the teeth, giving bad appearance. So persons with fluorosis cannot really erect freely. So it means they cannot stand freely, and the joints will be impaired. So what are the prevention methods or the control measures for this water pollution? So we should always think of, like, drinking water should be boiled, cooled, and then used, especially in the rainy season, because we really doesn't know how the source of the pollution occurs. So it is more important to boil, cool, and then use for the drinking purpose during the rainy seasons. And disinfection also is one of the method wherein we use chemicals like bleaching powder, the bleaching of water before the municipal water supply. They does this, like the water will be bleached and then given supplied to the population so that they are least affected. And also then pesticides and insecticides should be prevented. I mean, the washout of these pesticides or insecticides should be prevented to the nearby water lakes, or ponds, or water bodies, or pools, swimming pools also. And so these are some of the measures we have to take. Drainage water should not be allowed to mix with the drinking water. Whenever there is a drainage line, it has to be separated from the drinking water pipeline. And also drainage system should be properly maintained. Check for the corrosions. Check for the corrosion or wear or tear of that pipeline. So this maintenance is necessary to avoid any water pollution. So chlorination is also another process that is adopted for the drinking. So for example, 1 liter of water, 30 to 40 milligrams of chlorine is added for perfect disinfection that kills bacteria, fungi and fungal spores and other microbes. So this is a good agent, a very disinfectant agent that we use. The chlorine tablets also used. This is one of the method. Chlorination. Chlorine tablets are used that will be dissolved in a liter of water before they are used for drinking purpose. The other methods are like reverse osmosis, UV treatment. UV treatment is a modern technique that we are using, and ozonized water. If we see our water purifiers, they also like marketing techniques they are using, like UV treated ozonization is also available. This is one of the form of technique that is used to disinfect the water. So that is helpful for the drinking water, helps in safe drinking water. And also all the municipality water has to be treated with these treatments to avoid any water pollution. So these are the control measures we have to take it in practice so that we avoid ending up in diseases. Thank you.
Like, share and subscribe. Hit the bell icon for more updates.